In today's Whiteboard Leadership moment, we're talking about another leadership lid. Again, lids are those things that we hit in ministry and in life that hold us back, but these things very often have a remedy, and there's a number of them. And I got to tell you, the one we're talking about today is one of my favorite ones to talk about. I see this in churches that are doing great. They have this one figured out. And the churches that are struggling, this is normally one of the biggest issues, and it's the issue of culture. Culture is the defining set of attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors of a given group. And what we find is that you can have the best strategies in the world, but if the culture is not aligned with the strategies, as Peter Drucker once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so when it comes to culture, there's different cultures of churches. And let me just kind of define four categories, four things to think about when it comes to defining your culture. Now, this will help you when you're interviewing people for the job, when they're asking, you can ask questions based on these four areas. You can learn about them, they can learn about you, and so things are much more clear when they come on your team. And you can also recognize when these are the issues that are problematic with employees who are already on the team. The first is style. Every team has a style of doing things. I'm not just talking about the style of worship, which is a good thing. I'm talking about the way that we interact with each other. I'm talking about how we look at change and how we look at conflict and how we handle hard times. And we'll talk about perspective in just a minute. But every church has a style of doing things. I got to tell you that we hired people from around the country in Arizona, and it was real interesting that when we hired people from New England, they just didn't work because stylistically there were difference there. But when we hired from California or Texas, it did work, and we hired from Virginia, it did work. And one of the reasons we hired from Virginia and North Carolina a lot was because that's where I grew up. And the leader is always the cultural architect. He's the one that kind of creates the style of what's happening in the life of the church. And so we found different places around the country that just worked because of they understood the culture of our church, they understood our style. Second is pace. There are churches that make fast decisions, slow decisions. There are churches that are methodical and have to answer all the questions and dot all the I's and cross all the T's and make sure everything's answered before they make a decision. There's others that just kind of, ready, shoot, aim, and the way they do stuff. And so, it just depends on your pace is really important. Some go really quick, some go really slow. If you get someone on your team who's really quick and you're slow, you're going to question them. If you get someone on your team and you're really slow and they're really quick, you're going to be frustrated by them. And then priorities. What's most important to you? For some, it's things like worship is most important, or prayer is most important. For some, it's evangelism and compassion ministry is most important. For some, it's discipleship. So it just what's most important to you in your priorities. Most churches have a lead edge. It's either their doctrine, or it's their methodology, philosophy, or it's relationship. I mean, they all have all three, but one typically leads. And so what are your priorities? Is it foreign missions or is it local missions? Is it local evangelism? Is it personal evangelism? Is it street evangelism? You've got to know, is it this worship style? Is it this? What are your priorities as a team? And then finally, perspective. What I'm trying to do with perspective is just kind of give you a list. When it comes to certain things, how do you respond to those things? How do you act in those scenarios? What does your team think and expect of people on the team? For example, modeling. How important is modeling of leadership? In my mind, leadership sets the way. And so if you don't have models, you're telling people you should rather than follow me. And it's not healthy. How do they look at crisis and challenge? See, in our church, we looked at it as an opportunity, and it actually energized us. But in a lot of churches, it's no. It just totally drains us. But how's your team look at that? How about change? We created a culture of change. We always wanted to get better. We always wanted to improve. And yet other churches have a different mindset. No. We're going to be methodical and work things. As long as they work, we're going to keep working them and just know what the team mentality is, know what the culture is. Effort. What's your expectation of effort? We had this tension between home and work. We wanted them to make great efforts at work, but we also didn't want to compromise the family. So we would work hard, do our best, and put family first, and we carry that tension through our ministry. What's their concept of team? There are a lot of individual stars out there. There are a lot of silos in ministry. There are a lot of individual contributors, and some teams are made up of just individual superstars. And others are made up of people that, no, we're better together. The team will always outthink, outlast, outperform the individual. And so let's work together. What's your team concept? In our case, it was we want to take the hill, but we want to take it together. We're all about moving forward, but we want to make sure that we're together on this as well. But we won't compromise the goal, but we will try to bring the entire team forward so we're working together. What's your view of problems? I mean, some people can only see the problems, and some teams can solve the problems. We chose to live on the solution side of every issue. And so we only hired people that couldn't just see the problem, but they would try to move forward in initiative and trying to how to figure out how to solve the problem. And then skill set. Do people know who they are? Is there sober-mindedness? Do they understand who they are, who they're not, and do what's best for the team? How important is it for people to recognize that this is what I'm great at and someone else on the team is better than me, so I'm going to defer to them. I'm going to actually say, hey, listen, I can't do this. I'm going to ask you to do this, and just be okay with that kind of thing. And then finally, focus. I mentioned that before about worship and discipleship and serving and outreach and missions and evangelism. What's the focus of the team? What I found in a lot of ministries is that we naturally focus in one way, and so we have to make a focus statement on something that's not natural for us in order for us to at least do this a little bit. We had a statement at our church, we exist for those who aren't here yet, because we knew we were really focused on insiders, but we need to also be focused on outsiders, and it created this balance between discipleship and evangelism in our church. Listen, like Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I encourage you to look at your culture, know your culture, and then design phrases and words and trainings around what it means to be a part of your team. This has been a Converge Whiteboard Leadership Moment. To learn more about Converge or to join us, check out converge.org.